Did you know there are over 180 documented cognitive biases? I mean, the exact number can vary depending on how they are categorized and defined. But in this video, I'll explain just 5 of the most common cognitive biases, which I learned about from another phenomenal book. And this book is from the Nobel Peace Prize winning author Daniel Kahneman of his international best-selling book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Comment below if any of you have read this incredible book. And stick around to the end because I'm going to share with you my personal experiences of how I've been trying to be more cognizant and overcoming some of these biases we all experience to make better decisions. So number 1 is confirmation bias. See, confirmation bias is the tendency for us to seek out and prioritize information that may align with our pre-existing beliefs. See, while disregarding evidence or any other information that may challenge what we believe. And this makes this bias particularly insidious with social media algorithms because social media algorithms exacerbate this. So let me expand on this. The algorithms are designed to cater to our specific preferences and likes, literally what we engage with more frequently, what we watch more often. And this reinforces our existing views about something, beliefs. And the more time we spend on these platforms, we're fed the steady stream and fire hose of information that mirrors our beliefs, creating kind of an echo chamber that starts to narrow our perspective and makes it increasingly difficult to see beyond our own echo chamber. This not only limits our understanding, but can also really deepen the divisions by isolating us within our own belief systems. This is why, in the States, we are becoming more and more polarized. We see this play out day in and day out on social media platforms and even impact political events. I mean, one notable political event was how Facebook's role was particularly scrutinized for its impact on the U.S. 2016 presidential election of Trump. So how do we overcome our own confirmation bias? Try to make an effort to explore and understand completely opposing views, even if it's really hard, and it will feel really hard. You approach it with a bit of curiosity versus judgment, and you aim to understand why somebody may be thinking this way, the cognitive empathy. You may find that this approach may be kind of enlightening and surprising to widen your lens and perspective on things. See, I personally practice this approach, tried to. And one example is a few years ago, I came across Ben Shapiro on YouTube. And if you're not familiar, he is a well-known conservative political commentator, and I tend to lean a bit more liberal, so his views are definitely on the opposing side on a lot of topics. But I found his intelligent arguments really challenged me to think at least or understand different beliefs in a very interesting way, at least, from a very curious perspective, learn to think that, I can understand why he thinks this way or why we can look at certain topics and beliefs from a different lens. And this approach doesn't just apply in the political realm, but really can be applied on any topic or area of your life. And if you do so, it will really help to broaden your perspective and lens on the world. So number 2 cognitive bias is called the anchoring effect. And this is our reliance and influence on an initial piece of information, which is called the anchor, when we make a decision on something. So this cognitive bias actually happens all the time. You may not be aware of it, but it happens all the time in sales and negotiations particularly. And let me give you an example of where I witnessed this anchoring effect in full force. So earlier this year, I visited Marrakesh and I observed every single souk merchant in this bustling, large souk initially state their first price about 5 to 6 times what they were willing to accept as the final offer. That was their inflated anchor, knowing there was going to be a lot of bargaining. So there's no really foolproof way to overcome anchoring effect. But one way I found to mitigate this in our decision making, especially in the example of negotiation, is to introduce your own anchor with a much lower counter. And so this applies in the negotiation. And when doing so, this kind of moves the anchor, so to speak, to balance out the negotiation from a really highly inflated initial anchor price to your lower anchor counter. So I actually even have been seeing this play out all the time where I live currently in Lisbon, where real estate prices have skyrocketed and the initial listed price is actually quite inflated as the anchor. And then number 3, cognitive bias, is called the halo effect. This cognitive bias occurs when our initial positive impression of a person, company, product, or thing influences our subsequent perception and judgment of that thing or person. You may have experienced this unknowingly. So it's a common bias that many of us might experience without even knowing it. I mean, I certainly have, and I'll give you 2 examples. One in a professional setting and one in a dating scenario. So in a professional environment, I have been in the position in the corporate world of hiring people for my teams. And I have selected a candidate before, based more so weighted on their great first impression. I mean, they had a glowing resume, an impressive education, and worked at some well-known companies, and they came really polished and just eloquent in the interview. Versus, I had other candidates who also had similar skills and experiences, but may not have made that really incredible first impression. And I know first impressions really do make quite an impact. However, I later realized that they weren't able to deliver on the first impression that they made on me. And in a similar situation in the dating world, for example, let's say you go on a first date with someone who seems really polished and takes you to a nice restaurant, and they engage in a decent conversation, and you feel like you had a really great positive first impression of this person, which may lead you to believe that they would make a great partner just off of that, the first impression of the first date, without even actually spending enough time to actually get to know if they can really be a good partner. And this halo effect really colors our overall judgment of the person. I mean, this experience has happened in my past many times. Has it for you? So to overcome it, try to consciously separate your initial first impression from the overall judgment of a person, product, thing, etc. And try not to be swayed by this polished veneer, this polished facade, or just the first impression of something or someone. I tell my girlfriends all the time that just because, at least in the dating scenario, just because you had a really great first date, it doesn't actually translate or indicate that they will be a great boyfriend or partner. You really have not collected enough data and interactions between the two. So number 4, cognitive bias, is called the availability heuristic. And this is a cognitive bias where we overestimate the likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. So I'll give you a personal example that I recently experienced. I started to notice a trend where several people I was coming in contact with, who I didn't know well, mentioned difficulties of finding this specific type of product locally here in Portugal. And then I heard about this new initiative that Portugal was increasing trade between countries and accessibility of this product. And because of these recent examples and my ability to that available information that was just coming to me, I started to conclude that starting a business focused around this product might be a great opportunity in Portugal, even though this assumption was based on my limited observations and only the available information I was recently gathering, rather than comprehensive market research. That's when I caught myself relying on availability heuristics rather than on detailed market research and information just beyond what was available to me, or that what I was easily accessing. Number 5, common cognitive bias is what you see is all there is. So this is a little bit similar, and this is based on when we make decisions solely based on the information immediately available. Again, similar to availability heuristic, but often overlooking what might be missing. So another example I experienced personally to illustrate this is I experienced a problematic real estate transaction here in Portugal, and I am still unfortunately dealing with it. Without diving into all the specifics of that situation, I can share with you that I realized my decision earlier in the transaction was influenced by an assumption that I had the real estate transaction process in Portugal would mirror what I experience and know of in the United States, where I'm from. So I overly relied on that information and assumption without considering the potential differences in the local process and information that I didn't further gather, which ultimately led to the complications that I am still dealing with today. So my biggest lesson from this unfortunate experience, influenced by the what you see is all there is cognitive bias, is to question your assumptions. Challenge your initial assumptions by considering what information may actually be missing and how it could affect your decision. Make sure you ask all the parties involved to address any and all questions about these assumptions, leaving no stone unturned. Additionally, try to explore alternative scenarios or outcomes based on the possible different sets of information. So I was overly reliant on this is going to go that way. That was my fault and influenced by the what you see is what there is. So in summary, understanding these cognitive biases, confirmation bias, anchoring effect, availability heuristic, what you see is all there is, can profoundly, as you can see, really impact subconsciously, unconsciously, the decisions we make. But when we become more cognizant of it, we can try to mitigate its impact by seeking out different perspectives, seeking out more information, challenging and questioning assumptions to make better decisions in our lives, whether it's in the professional setting or personal setting as well. So what do you think? If you like this video, stick around because I think you will also enjoy this next video that I'll link to right here. It's called How to Master Emotions from a Neurological Perspective, which I learned also from the eye-opening and transformative book by Lisa Feldman Barrett, the renowned neuroscientist. So it has really transformed my beliefs and understanding about how emotions are made. So check it out here, and thank you for watching. See you next time.